Hello, Yellowknifers and friends, and welcome to virtual Bible study for this Sunday, March the 30th, where we're getting ready to mark the fourth Sunday in Lent. My last video to you was shot in Brazil and with palm trees in the background. And most of you who I've talked to know that that vacation went a little bit sideways with my dad getting ill, far away from home, which is always a really, really scary thing. And it was quite an adventure to get us all home safely. But I have never been so grateful to be in my home. And as we're all recovering and safe and fine, turning my attention to the regular stuff of life. So work and chores and family. And we have a parable this week about family and all the ways that family can be kind of challenging and kind of difficult. This week's scripture story is going to be the parable of the Prodigal Son, which is a sort of known story outside of church circles. The Prodigal Son is a reference that gets made a lot. I'm not going to read the story because it's quite long. It's found in Luke chapter 15. But basically, the younger son goes to his dad and says, "I'd like my inheritance now," which is a way of kind of saying to his dad, like, "I wish you were dead," which is a tough thing to hear. But he decides he's going to go live his life his way, and it doesn't go very well. It doesn't take him very long to kind of squander his inheritance and end up very, very poor, very, very hungry. He is living amongst, I guess, pigs and not really getting enough to eat. And so he decides that he's going to starve to death if he stays out in this on this adventure. And so he decides to return home, where his dad is waiting for him. And he expects to go back and say, "Dad, like I've really done wrong by you, and I don't expect much, but I wonder if you would take me on as one of your servants. I could work." And he realizes that his dad's servants and farmhands are being paid more than he currently has. So that's really all he's looking for. And the dad, of course, goes 10 steps beyond that. He's waiting for him on the road, and he actually welcomes him back as a son, embraces him, and gives him a robe and a ring, and kind of throws a banquet and kills a fatted calf in his honor, and is really, really happy to see him. The one person in the story that's not very happy is the other son, the prodigal son's older brother, who has kind of been staying the course this whole time and been working on and doing everything quote unquote correctly. And he gets pretty mad at his father and says, like, "You've never even given me so much as a goat, and you've got the most precious calf slaughtered for my brother, and he's kind of useless, and he's been out living this loose existence with we're told prostitutes and really done a big shame to our family. So why is this?" And at the end of the story, the elder brother kind of refuses to join the party, but the father tries his best to help the older son, understand the nature of his forgiveness. And reading this story, like it's not my favorite one to talk about, to preach. And when I mention the prodigal son to others, people kind of say, "Oh, I hate that story," because no one really behaves as they're supposed to, and it just doesn't go the way that any of us think it should go. I think maybe one of the reasons why parables in general, and particularly this parable, are so infuriating to listen to is because we can see ourselves so easily. And this is one of those stories where we can see ourselves so easily in each of the characters. So I was reading a commentary about this parable. One of the scholars said that worse than death is the feeling of being lost, especially when this condition has been brought on by one's own lust or greed or arrogance. So let's start with the younger son. His younger son has turned his back on his family. He's forsaken his homeland. He's broken all the rules of his religious heritage, like reduced to living with pigs. That's a big deal for someone who was Jewish back then. Unclean animals and all that kind of stuff. And he has lost himself entirely. And his only choice to stay alive is to go home. But can you imagine what that would have felt like what that would even mean to come to that realization? he's probably hoping actually for this work-based relationship, because then it would mean that he wouldn't have to actually like face his dad or face his brother. Like if he's just out in the barn, uh, working for bread and water, then maybe he can somehow manage to live through the shame of his humiliation. But instead, to be sort of welcome back, imagine like that anxiety that you would feel to know that you've sinned, and to know that you have a lot to answer for, and that we've all known the burn of shame. It's pretty easy, any of us who have ever screwed up on any kind of grand scale, which is all of us for sure. For sure I have, and I think we all have, and we know what that feels like, and we know what it feels like, the fear to have to face the person who we have wronged. That's not an easy place to be. The older brother represents our view of how things should be, I think, what this sort of tidy, obedient life looks like. What are the right things to do, and how do we keep things in control? He always does the right thing. It sounds like he's a pretty straight and narrow kind of guy, and he's never been thanked for it. Never been thanked for sort of holding down the fort and staying the course when his older brother kind of went off in his own direction, or sorry, when the younger brother went off in his own direction. And I can sort of imagine how the older brother feels, right? Like maybe he was plagued by notions that he on his own was not enough for his father. His father is always sort of waiting for his other son to come home. He's acutely aware, I think, of his father's pain, feeling like he could never make up for that hole that the younger brother left behind. And like, I'd be mad too, right? There's like this serious resentment. I think he needs something from his father that he's probably not getting. And we've all known that kind of resentment and bitterness and anger. We know what the feeling is of our hearts hardening because we think that someone else is getting the treatment that we feel entitled to. And I think it's pretty easy to see ourselves in not wanting to go to that party. I'm not sure that I would want to go to that party either. Kind of like, WTF, Dad? Like, I've been here all along. What about me? It's a pretty tough shoes to walk in, and definitely easy to understand. I've always thought a lot about the brothers, actually, and their relationship to each other. I haven't spent a ton of time over the years thinking about the father, and wondering what his reaction was to the son coming to him in the first place for that inheritance. We don't get a lot out of that exchange. We're not really told the background. We don't know what their relationship was like up to that point. We don't know what caused the younger son to say, I'm kind of done with this family. I don't want to live here anymore. That would have really hurt to hear. But I also wonder, like, what was going on before that? Had the father already spent a lifetime worrying about this kid? Was something already ruptured in their relationship that he kind of knew that there wasn't too much hope in saving this? He seems to give over the inheritance pretty easily, and I've always wondered about that. Maybe the father wasn't a very good dad. Like, I don't know. Maybe he was relieved to see the back of his son, or then he felt this lifetime of guilt and shame because he always regretted how things had ended up. And we just don't know any of these things. But what we do know is that nothing that happens after the son leaves, nothing that happens makes sense after that. The economy of the grace and the love that's expressed by the dad when the younger son comes back is ridiculous. It's extravagant, and it's beyond anything that would have been expected of him. A Palestinian Jewish patriarch who was publicly shamed by his son in the way that the father was. He never would have been waiting on the road, anticipating that son's return. That just wouldn't have happened. He never would have embraced him The idea of throwing him a party and giving him clothing and giving him a piece of jewelry is actually like royal treatment. And that is so over the top as to what would be expected from the kind of the patriarchal head of the household, you've dishonored me kind of system under which that family would have lived. He devised every convention and every accepted behavior in deciding to welcome the son back to the family. And it's kind of no wonder the older brother kind of asks these questions like, what are you doing? It almost is like humiliating behavior in and of itself, because it belittles the dad's position in the family. I think if you read parables carefully, you notice that a lot of the times what happens in these transactions, in these relationships, is they often are really over the top. It's sort of like a really exaggerated scale of like if Jesus is trying to teach us something about forgiveness, then he's going to really hammer the point home. Because it makes no sense what he is doing, but the fact remains that it's his choice to do it. So none of this goes the way that you think it's going to go. None of this goes the way we think. No one acts the way we think that they should act, or that we think we might act. But two things stand out to me when I ask myself some serious questions about the prodigal son. And the first is the idea that the grace that enters the story is not actually the grace that anybody wants, I don't think. It's the grace that everybody needs, but I'm not sure that anyone actually wants it to go this way. The younger son, I think, would have preferred to have dinner in the barn. And instead, he is faced with the incredibly hard work of rebuilding a relationship that he had a huge role in breaking. And he wants dinner, but he gets his family back. So that means that he gets all of the obligations of having a family back again. And that's maybe not what he wanted. He has to face his brother. He has to make amends to his father. He has to be the subject of neighborhood gossip. He has to work every day at being a son again, at trying to find a place for himself in this life that he abandoned. And you know, that's a tough road. Reconciliation, as we know, is really, really hard work. And really what he wanted was a meal. And instead he gets so much more. The older brother, I think, might have preferred that the younger brother just stay lost. Instead, he has to figure out what it means to share his life and the family business with him, and he has to share his father with him once more. And, you know, he may have just been happier, or thought he would be happier just keeping things as they were. And the father, despite his like massive act of generosity, he's still down half his estate. He's still trying to make ends meet. Now he's got another mouth to feed. Now he has a definite image problem to overcome in his neighborhood. And, you know, like this, like we're not told sort of like how the family goes forward together, the three of them, after all of this. But it's such an amazing reminder to me of how grace is usually incredibly messy and complicated and not ideal at all. And it doesn't behave at all in the ways that we might idealize it and think it should behave. It doesn't erase pain. It doesn't negate our bad feelings. But what it does is that it expresses unequivocally to us and to the sons in the story that the father wants to live in relationship with his sons, no matter what, both of them. And to the younger son, this act of grace says, it doesn't matter what you have done, I love you anyway. And to the older son, it says, it doesn't matter what you might do, I'm going to love you anyway. I will always love you. And it's so uncomfortable to imagine being the recipient of that kind of love. But that is the kind of love that God expresses for us, of course. Being God's children, over and over in the biblical narrative, it is the promise of a relationship, and then a rupture in that relationship, and then a renewal of that promise, that covenant, over and over and over again. And it keeps repeating through the entire biblical narrative, that cycle of promise, rupture, renewal, until the ultimate rupture, which is crucifixion, and then the ultimate renewal, which is resurrection. And it's that this parable telling us that God's love doesn't stop, no matter how messy it gets. God's grace never stops, no matter how bad things get. And the second thing, I think, is the idea that it's never ever too late for grace to enter the picture. Never too late. Right now, I have the immense privilege of walking with a family. One of my best childhood friends, my oldest friends, is about to lose her dad. And I was talking to him, dad, yesterday, and he told me that he and his brother had been estranged for many years. And they only just recently made amends on the occasion of his older brother's 80th birthday. And now they are both dying. And of course, they regret so much the time that they lost. And he talked to me about that quite a bit. But as I read and reflect on the story of the prodigal son, I just couldn't help thinking, they made up just in time. They made up just in time, because you never know what is ahead. And you can't fix what happened over 40 years or 10 years or whatever the amount of time is that a relationship is jeopardized. But even when a situation seems beyond hope, and even if it seems like there's no reason for it at all, grace finds some way always to fight its way in if you allow it. So, my friends, this is what I think. Grace rarely looks the way we want it to look, and hope rarely behaves in ways that make any sense to us. And there isn't a magic eraser when it comes to forgiveness. But the parable of the prodigal son reminds us that grace is always possible. And when it comes, the scale is beyond our comprehension. I cannot wait to hear what Janice Daly is going to do with this story. She is hard at work at it and doing a great job. And these are just my thoughts. And I wanted to open this story up for you a little bit as we journey forward in Lent together. So blessings on you, and thoughts with all of you. And may God's grace go with you each and every day of this Lenten journey. Blessings. Amen.